Hey, welcome in everybody to the initial podcast for what I think we're going to call the chaos. All right, the chaos, and there's some reason behind that, not the least of which is change. Right? Because in order for something to change, you've got to introduce a reason to change and chaos into the system. So I think that's what we're going to talk about, guys. A little bit of education, leadership through here. I'm Rick Stevens. I am hosting the chaos. I am here with Kevin Duren. I'm here with Bob Felice. And for all the viewers out there, I've got to let you in on a little secret. These two guys hired me 3 times. Which, you know, I got to say they've got some good taste between the two of them in there. Just to really get us kind of kicked off here, Kevin, you want to give a little introduction of who you are and how you got to where we're at today?
Yeah, well, like you said, my name is Kevin Duren. I'm a retired superintendent. I like to call myself a recovering superintendent. I've been in education for 32 years. From a math teacher to an assistant principal to an executive director of math achievement, and then a superintendent for 3 years. It was quite the journey. Nothing that I set out to do initially, but I tell you, there is so much I have learned, so much I had to learn on my own, and so many things about education that was just revealed to me a little bit over time. So it's been a journey. I've got to know lots of great people, had lots of great discussions about the world and the direction of education in general, and with my conversations with you and Bob, and I'm just excited to set forth another edition of where that's going to go, because learned a lot and have a lot to maybe discuss.
Awesome. Yeah, we are definitely going to be looking forward to hearing about this over, you know, I'm a little bit of a dreamer over the years that the chaos exists in this. Bob, tell the viewers, listeners a little bit about you and your journey.
I started out with Kevin. We actually were in a cohort together when we were getting our administrator license. So he was one of my teammates. Kevin was also one of my teammates at Whitefield High School, where we both were teachers. He taught math upstairs from the gym, which was a weird setup, but that's what it was.
Whatever it takes.
We became buddies at that time and then remained good friends over the years. Ultimately, and ironically, I was hired initially to be the dean of students at Mesa Ridge High School. And it was the principal who was leaving, Anna Romero there, who hired me. And when she left, a new principal came in, and it was that principal's decision to hire Kevin. And I went to Lewis Palmer High School, where I became dean of students. He started at dean of students at Mesa Ridge, and that's where my career kind of started off. I was an assistant principal for 6 years, and I became principal of Falcon Middle School, and then principal of Vista Ridge High School, and zone superintendent in District 49. Was zone superintendent for a couple years, became the first innovation zone in the United States of America, led that, and that happened right at the same time I was diagnosed with MS. And I was forced into retirement. Went through a dark time, probably 4 years of getting hit with exacerbation after exacerbation, and started coming back, started using my own leadership ideas, philosophy in the mirror on myself. Eventually getting healthy, I started reaching out into the community and working with people who maybe were diagnosed recently, maybe they went through a divorce, diagnosis of some kind, maybe they're just going through depression, maybe they are addicted to a substance. And all of a sudden, Bob became the person that was lifting those people up, kind of pushing them in a good direction. And it didn't take too long until the education world reached back out to me and started saying, hey, why don't you come lead some professional development? Why don't you talk to our staff and fire them up, motivate them? Then ultimately, it led to working, coaching principals all over Colorado Springs in my leadership philosophy, the CLL philosophy.
Awesome. Now we're gonna dig into that CLL philosophy here over the course of really several different podcasts. I know that really the genesis of where all three of us are here today came out of you guys talking about a leadership retreat that you guys were working on. I know that both of you just have that heart for the world of education, for that leadership, not only in education, but outside of it as well. So Bob, start by telling us a little bit about what working on that retreat was like, and how you and Kevin got to the point where you said, maybe we should record this, because this is some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's kind of exactly how it went. The CLL framework starts with compete. We were talking about that the first time, and we got together again, and we were talking about the second part, the lead part. And it was some point right in the middle of that, Kevin looked at me and he said, "Hey, this is a podcast. We should just record everything we're talking about and share it out with the world." And that's when I told him, "Hey, I've been talking to Rick about something similar to this. Why don't we all get together and kind of make this real?"
Very nice. What kind of, in those discussions, Kevin, made you go, yeah, this we need to record because people need to hear this?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me was that I remember as a new administrator, and we talked about this, that there's no handbook, there's very little training. Mm-hmm. When you pick an administrator, you're picking the very best and brightest teacher that you feel like is doing a good job with engaging kids. They are understanding about the world of education just enough to have a leadership quality to them, and that we feel like that they're ready. But then we put them in those positions, we wrap around the title, and then that's it. You're just sort of floating on your own, waiting to get, what does success look like now? I knew what it looked like when I was a teacher. What does it look like as a leader? And we had kind of the answers as we were talking back and forth. It's like, yeah, this is a handbook. The ideas that we're talking about should be in a handbook. And I tell you, there's been a lot of training that Bob has done just with principals, and he has a formula and a format that he goes and mentors other principals. And as we started talking about what he is already doing, it really lends itself to a nice framework for a course or a lesson study or a podcast or a book or something that has to get out there to the masses. And so when I started hearing about it, I started to get excited. I was like, this can be packaged. This needs to be packaged.
Yes.
What Bob is doing is great as a one-on-one process for training for administrators, but we got to get that out there because this is a need.
Right.
We are inhibiting the success of really good young administrators that have the potential of being great administrators if they just knew enough to apply it to the success criteria of their positions.
Yeah. So in kind of looking at this, right, really taking that leadership focus as a whole, maybe even starting in that education world, Kevin, what would you say are some of those important pieces? Like why does leadership matter?
Oh, well, yeah.
We've got about an hour and a half. Go ahead. I'll leave you on your own.
Why does leadership matter? Man, I just think as a teacher, I felt good leadership through the classroom. I felt like the supports were there. I felt like I had good feedback. I felt like I knew how success was being measured. And I had a coach and a mentor that was letting me know if I was going in the right direction or if I was not going in the right direction. Education is a lonely job. I mean, we talk about, you have a team of people, but when you're in that classroom with 30 kids, you're the adult, and those are the 30 kids that you're supposed to work with, and you aren't getting any sort of coaching or mentoring or feedback in that moment. So we are, as leaders, we have to look at how do we give, our teachers the best opportunities for success? What are some things that we can give them in real time? And the most important thing is, do we have a good relationship with our teachers?
Yes.
To then be able to give them criticism without being critical and giving them feedback without being punitive.
Right.
And and giving them the freedom to actually try some things that they're excited about. And so it's kind of a dance. Leadership is not management. It's not, all the structures and rules and processes of making sure things are done right. I mean, that's part of it. But the biggest part, the most important part, is the relationships that you have with teachers so that they can feel comfortable being in the classroom by themselves. And when they have problems, when they have needs, they have a level of comfort to come to you and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I need to bounce some things off of you. I could go hours about the importance of leadership.
We will. At some point in time, we will spend hours talking about that. Bob, before I throw this to you with the same question, I am going to throw this out there. I left the world of education, the brick and mortar world, about 13 years ago or so. And over the years have built a business. I've got a couple business partners, but I have told them, and I'm going to maybe embarrass you a little bit here, that there is only one thing that would ever cause me to say, hey guys, I'm taking a leave of absence. And that's if Bob said, hey, I need your help. I'm going to go start a new school and I need you to help me build the community in there, build that culture. I've told my business partners, we're 10 years together now, that if Bob ever said that, I'm taking at least a year off and maybe 2 to help him go do that. And I will say that's because of the leadership that I see from you when I was that teacher working with you. So now you get to answer the question, why is leadership important?
Yeah, we could both probably talk for hours on this just one topic. Leadership is important because we're trying to change behavior. Ultimately, that we're trying to convince a large group of people when we're in charge of a school, especially of teachers, maybe 60 teachers potentially, depending on how large your building is, and we're trying to change behavior. And then we're also trying to change behavior of students at the same time. And we're trying to engage the teachers in engaging the students. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of leadership happening, and it doesn't happen without a relationship first. And I found that for me, that's the only way I found to lead. I never wanted to be the command and control leadership style. I fancy myself a level 5 leader, a servant leader. And I think that Kevin shares those traits, and that's why we get along so well. And that means that I want to work with you, and I want to get our relationship to a place where you're actually coming to me, because we have that relationship, that respect for one another, that you want to come to me because you have respect for me, and you're asking me, what do you think that I could add or should add to my classroom? And I don't ever want to be at that command and control, hey, Rick, you got to do it like this. I want you to want to come to me. And there's only one way I know how to do that, and that's have a real relationship. I actually care about Rick, the person. Listen to Rick, care about Rick, and and that's the only way to do it. That's the only way I know how to do it.
Right.
And that kind of leads us into today's topic. The last leg of the leadership framework, the CLL framework, is love. And I walk in to a room, in every room I walk into, looking exactly like this. And
yes, I've seen it.
And I'm still pushing this idea of I'm going to love the people I serve. And if I love the people I serve, that means 3 things, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to encourage. We are professional encouragers. That's really what we are. That's still what I do with principals. I am a professional encourager. They have amazing ideas. They're incredibly wicked smart people. And they always knew that they wanted to do it like this, but when those bright lights come on and it's just them, it gets a little bit harder to put yourself out there and do the thing that you dreamt that you would do. And so I become the encourager in the same way I was with teachers, because I want to unleash that passion that they had when they were going through school themselves and they were daydreaming, about the coach or the teacher that they would be when they got in the classroom or on the court or field. And I want to unleash that. And that's what I'm trying to dig for, because that's where the growth is. I don't believe that we can find a lot of growth in pedagogy, in how you teach your classroom, because we hire experts in the first place.
Right.
There's only this much left. But in my want to, in my inspiration, my motivation to really bring it every day, there's a lot more. The gap's bigger. And it's way bigger with kids. We'll talk about that later too.
Yeah, it's that that idea, right? That love is what oftentimes we don't even know how to measure, right? When we're talking about those teachers, you can see it in there in the administrators. You can see it in there, but it's very difficult to measure. You brought up that level 5 leader. 15, 20 years ago, however long ago it was that Jim Collins had written Good to Great and talked about the 5 different levels of leadership, and level 5 being that servant leader. One of the things that he talks about is that for that level 5 leader, one of the quotes that stuck with me forever since having first read it, is that it's not that they have trained themselves not to say me, but they don't understand me. They understand we. And they understand that team concept through there. Kevin, can you talk a little bit about that team concept of leadership that you looked for in your other administrators, that you looked for in those teachers that you hired, and that you looked for that they could inspire that in the kids, whether it was in the classroom, on the field, whatever?
Yeah, that is important. It's more evident when it doesn't appear.
Yes.
When you have someone who is very anti-we and more about I, because you're always trying to untie that knot with them, with their influence of others, the type of, I don't want to say toxic leadership, but it becomes kind of wrapped up in their own self-preservation.
Right.
It's really all about how they are appearing to others, not their influence and impact on others. When you have a good leader that is all about we, they're looking not to elevate themselves. It's not about self-glorification. Really, it's about what the goal is, and the goal is the kids.
Yeah.
If the goal is to make sure that our kids are involved, they're engaged, then it doesn't matter who does, who's out in front of the camera. It doesn't matter who is getting the accolades. All that matters is the metric of what are the successful indicators that students are actually involved in school, that they're achieving, they're thriving, all of those things that we like to measure. Sometimes we don't even measure.
Right.
And
right.
Bob has, I'm sure he'll speak to it at some point, but
yes.
There's a lot of things that are part of an indicator of student success that we don't measure. But back to what the we really means, it's about, again, it's a very lonely profession, and it can be very isolating if you don't have a we concept or a team concept.
Right.
As a math teacher, when I taught math, for the hours I was with the kids, I knew I had some buddies right down the hall, right next door, that immediately between classes or maybe during lunch break, I would shoulder up with them and we're talking and we're saying, well, how did this go? Well, I'm having this problem here. What did that look like to you? And it's not about us trying to brag like, oh, I'm the best teacher and I did this correct. It's about, I feel like this can be better. I think you may have something or I may have something that can be used. So let's collab and make sure that we're not leaving any stones unturned. Why? Because it's not about us as teachers. It's about the kids learning.
Yes.
If the goal is really in focus, then all the other stuff kind of just lines up behind it. So for me, that's why the we and the team approach is better. Take that from teacher to principal, assistant principal to superintendent. It really is about a team. You always have a team of people that is there to promote what the goal is.
Right.
Again, if that goal is focused on kids or focused on the right, the right direction, everyone knows what that goal is, and we can team up together to approach that goal.
Yeah. So, so Bob, tell us a little bit more about this love piece of that three-legged stool, because I got to tell you, I am willing to bet that while there are a lot of folks in education that understand it, it's an uncomfortable piece to hear as to why love matters in the leadership framework.
Yeah, as I work with principals, a lot of times I hear, well, I never needed that. I didn't need that type of motivation you're talking about. And what we need to recognize is that the cream has sort of risen to the top, so to speak, and that personality type has also shaken to the top. And so in the, as that personality type, they're going to have that red personality a lot of times in leadership, even within the school system, and that changes things. Love. I want to create an environment with a lot of positive peer pressure. So I want to create that environment where my teachers are holding each other accountable for the goal. It's exactly like it works in a sports team, a football team, a baseball team. As soon as the players start holding themselves accountable, all of a sudden, man, is it clicking and humming. And that's what I'm seeking. And the only way I know how to do that is by really building those relationships. And that's done through actually serving people, actually caring about them. And so I do that through a whole bunch of very deliberate encouragement. I am hunting good behavior, the kind of expectations that I hope to see. I'm going to call that out, praise it, tell people thank you, and let them know about that as much as possible. That's that encouragement piece. I can't get to the next step, which is strategy. I can't get there with you until I've encouraged you. And when I've encouraged you enough, that opens the gate. It allows me to actually strategize with you. And in a perfect world, you're asking me to come and strategize. Hey, let's get together. And that's that next step in the process is strategy. But I can't get there until I have a relationship with you.
Yeah. So now, Kevin, let me ask you this, right? Because Bob's talking about that relationship piece being the central, really, cog in this wheel. When you were working in the various administrative levels, what were some of the things that you did to help develop those relationships? That if there's somebody who just went through an interview process and they're hoping in 2 months from now to get offered even an assistant principal position somewhere, that would be really great for them to know. How should they go about building those relationships? How did you do that?
Yeah, it takes time and intention. Fortunately for me, I had the cheat code. I was the assistant principal in a building that, and the principal of a building that I actually was a student in and was a teacher in. And the time between being a teacher and assistant principal and principal was about 3 to 4 years. So a lot of the same people I had already had good relationships with were still there. I had a good reputation amongst the staff that hired me into that position. And so I had a little bit of a leg up. But if I were coming in cold, the first thing that I would do as a leader is if there is a leadership team, which every building should have a leadership team, I would have a one-on-one lunch date over the summer before we started school with each one of those folks. And I had to do that my second or third year as things were not going well for me as a principal. That's how I reestablished that, was like, look, let's have a conversation. I'm Kevin. You are a teacher that wants to be successful. We're going to get to re-know each other. And if you don't already know me, you need to know my heart. And have those discussions. Because people really want to work for somebody that they can relate to. It's not about being liked. It's just about people knowing that you don't have an ulterior motive to grandilotize. I'm not sure if that's a word.
It is today.
It is today. And they don't want to be a part of that. Nobody wants to be a part of, feeding somebody else's ego. They are there struggling day to day, like we've all talked about, and they want somebody to be in their corner. And of course, being held accountable doesn't it doesn't feel good. But if they have to be held accountable, they want somebody that is going to approach them with dignity, with respect, and with fairness. And you don't know that until you know that person, until you know their heart. And so having conversations, that leadership group is important. Initially, when I started to really get out beyond that, I visited every single one of my teachers in their classroom. I stood there and spent time to make sure that I had a conversation with them. Not that I was just trying to, well, how many kids do you have? And what's your husband's name? What's your wife's name?
Right.
No, I really wanted to find something that I could connect with them and find a commonality. And it takes time. Like I said, it's with a big building from a high school perspective, it took a long time to get to everybody. Thankfully, with the cheat code, I had a lot of those folks already that I knew, but every year you hire more people. Every year you're going to refresh your building. And so it's like one of the top 3 to 5 things of a principal or assistant principal's job is to really know their staff and to have their staff trust them. And trust doesn't come just with the word, it comes with actions.
Yeah. And I actually I talk to a lot of folks, have a lot of things that go on in my world where I actually have clients who interact with folks that have worked for both of you, who work for or work in the same district as a new administrator that I'm pretty sure we all know here down at Mesa Ridge. And I had the opportunity to talk with one of my clients several weeks ago and say, so what do you know? What do you know? What do you hear? She had no idea that I knew him. So I'm just asking the question. Yeah. And her response, because she's a teacher in a different building, right? But it's the feeder junior high for the high school. And she said, I have heard nothing but great things. That this is the kind of guy people want to go work for. And I had told Bob, because I knew that he had done some of the mentoring down there. She said, because when he came in, everybody thought it was going to be, okay, I'm walking in and we're going to do A, B, C, D, E. And what he first did is he came in and started asking questions. Hey, what do we do? What do we do well? What needs to be changed? What's the best way do you think we should go about changing that? And he was building those relationships. To not walk in and say, I am the expert, listen to me, but to say, you guys, the staff, know this best. What can I learn from you? And use that to kind of really build my leadership framework in there. So, and I think that's exactly it. It's the relationship building. It comes from asking the questions, and oftentimes it really isn't the checklist. Okay, I know their spouse. I know how many children they have. I know if they are local or if they moved here X number of years ago. Yeah. It's from that place, I would almost call it, of humility, to say, I don't know enough about you. I want to learn more. Help me understand who you are.
Yeah, and to that a little bit, I mean, there's some authenticity that comes out regardless if we want it to or not. If I'm trying to scam you, there's a little scam sensor in the back of your head that makes you feel like this guy's only talking to me to get something. This is a transactional conversation, not a relational conversation. And leaders have to be aware that as soon as you talk to someone, people are looking to see which side of the aisle are you on.
Right.
Are you trying to get something from me, or are you just sincerely wanting to have a discussion and a conversation with me?
Right.
And I think when you come to it with a mindset that I want to, and I'm using Bob's words, I want to love that person. Yeah. I want to get to know them, not because I need something from them, because they're part of this building, and I'm gonna shower them with love and try to support them, rather than I need to get them on my side so that we can execute A, B, and C.
Right.
That's a feel, that's a gut, and instinctively people can seek that and smell that out at the very onset. So if you're not sincere, if you're not authentic, you're kind of in the wrong game.
Yes. Yeah. The field of education, and especially educational leadership, probably not for you in that instance. Bob, I'm going to ask you this question here, because not everyone in the building shares that same concept of I want my leader to fill in the blank, compete, lead, and love. And especially I'm going to go with a lot of educators, though they may be willing to pour that love into the kids, into their students, they may not always be willing to accept it from their administrators. How do you work with folks to say, hey, I'm just here, there is no ulterior motive. I am just trying to pour this love into you so you can go overflow and pour that somewhere else?
It's a great question. A lot of times you maybe get an opportunity to share your own vulnerability with the staff. And in that moment, yet to find one moment in my whole lifetime when somebody shared their vulnerability and it was construed or viewed by anybody who heard it as anything but strength. So I had a principal call me up on a Sunday night as an example, and he was struggling. He was just feeling all the weight, all the school board, the superintendent, all the cabinet members, all the students, the parents, his own staff, like all of it, just feeling the weight. And in the conversation, I asked him, have you shared that with your administrative team ever? Anything like what you're sharing with me right now, have you ever shared anything like that with them? Because they feel the same way you do. They feel the same way you do. And so next time you have an admin meeting, I want you to walk in there and I want you to share with them that you felt like that, because you're going to give them permission to have those moments too. Because in that moment, you're surrounded by the team Kevin was talking about earlier, that building level administrative team. Those are your support systems. And so you don't set yourself up to get the encouragement you need unless you have the courage to share your vulnerability with your team. And so I encouraged him to do that. He did. And what he got back was an entire team of people saying, yeah, sometimes that's me too. I had this happen the other day. And it led to the conversation of, hey, we need to be deliberate encouragers of each other, because we sometimes are all we've got, and so we need to make sure and do that on purpose. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. But
it does.
Well, and I had asked Bob in our last meeting, I said, why is the word courage and encourage just two letters off? Right. And I think I forgot how you worded it, but do you remember how you worded that? Because it was good for me to understand that really encouragement is about courage.
We're lending our courage
to
somebody else.
Yeah.
So when I encourage a person, and I'm really deliberate about it, so like a lot of the work I do, I am hired to inspire people. I'm hired to motivate people, and so I'm very conscious of the fact that, this is a tool. This is a really solid leadership tool, and so I want to encourage, and so I'm giving that person, actually lending them my courage, and I'm giving it to them, and they can actually take it with them and use it, and it's a deliberate effort.
Yeah,
That's cool.
So let me kind of throw this piece out there, because we in that education world, and even in that education leadership world, we're talking about working with our other staff members, other faculty, who are then pouring into the kids. Where do the parents play in this, right? Because I know it's an incredibly loaded question, but I know that oftentimes there's almost an adversarial type of relationship these days between parents and the school system. But having come from where I came from before I came out here to the public school system, we took the concept of in loco parentis not to mean those crazy parents, but to literally mean we were standing in their place, because that's what it means, and we're using the parents really as the co-host, if you will, of what's going on in their kids' lives, keeping them involved. making sure they know in advance, hey, this is what we're working on this week, next week, the week after. And I was a business teacher, so it was the whole, hey, if you guys have a specialty in this area, I would love to have you come talk to the kids. Yeah. Keeping all of that going. How do we use the concept of love to actually get the parents involved on that same we, and not to think of what we do as adversarial? What are some of those thoughts in there?
That's a big question, and parents can definitely make the job of education simpler or a lot more difficult.
Yes.
A lot of what you said is true. There's a lot to be said about information that we give parents, including them as that third leg of the educational stand that we're trying to all work together as a team, bringing them in as that other team member that maybe isn't always in conversations, but really cluing them in on ways that they can get involved. It changes at different levels too. The elementary teacher is very much a partner with the parent. They have to be, because the parents are right there. When my kids were that small, I didn't trust anybody other than myself about what was going to happen, and that level of trust was slowly given over time. As they get into junior high and high school, parents are maybe wanting to distance themselves. The kids are certainly wanting to distance themselves away from their parents, but we have to continue to bring parents along for what is the last stage of the educational process with their child. And that's engaging them with, information about the student's progress, sharing the reasons why we honor their student and their ability, making sure that just like what we know about our teachers as administrators, we know a lot about their kids, and that we appreciate what they bring to the table. Every time when I was a teacher, I was making a phone call to a parent, the first thing I wanted to do was to say how much I appreciated them being in class.
Yeah.
And even if it was like, your kid is talking too much, I'm
Right.
always trying to get them to taper that back. I always start with, their voice in the classroom is an important voice to be heard. When they're gone, it changes the dynamic, and not in a good way. But here's what I need for them to do so that we can continue to kind of serve all students and not just your student. So it's really about, how do we share our love for the student with parents?
Right.
As a parent, when I was getting a parent phone call as an administrator, or I was making a parent phone call as an administrator, I always wanted to make sure that I was making comments about it's the behavior and not their kid. That personally, unfortunately, I've had a lot of conversations with your child, and the more I talk to him, the more I like him. I used to use that a lot.
Yeah.
The more I talk to your kid, the more I like him. Oh, he's in your office a lot. The more I talk to him, the more I like him. He has a personality. He's just like me when I was his age. I wanted to make sure that there was a human and not just, here is the behavior, here are the things, I'm trying to manage his behavior. Because chances are that same parent is trying to manage their child's behavior at home.
Yes.
And they're frustrated and they have the same concerns that we do in education. But that's their kid.
Yeah.
That's part of them. If you indicate that their child is a failure, you've just told that parent that they have failed as a parent. So keeping parents on the team, keeping them in a position where they are being honored as part of that parent dynamic in the educational process, and love, like we had talked about. They have to feel that love first before you give any sort of criticism.
Yep. I'll throw that back to you as well, Bob. How do you encourage, whether it's your other administrative staff, it's your teachers, how do you encourage them to see the parent as a partner rather than an adversary? How do you help them to use what I would say is their greatest asset that they actually have available, that is also the most untapped asset?
I'm going to harness my entire staff to be the best Barack Obama I can possibly be. I'm going to be that community organizer. I'm going to engage them. Now, in District 49, we were cheating with this. gave us the opportunity, our school board at the time, 13 years ago, to pursue and run with innovation as an idea. And we were tasked specifically, I'm serving as superintendent, essentially reporting directly to the board for a third of the school district. And at that moment, it was all about just engage those community members. And it was full court press to get all of them in so that we could ask them the question, what is the best way that, you have all been watching us and been critical in moments. What are we not doing that we can be doing? And we just opened it wide. And ultimately, we got control of our calendar. And we had full autonomy over our entire calendar because of community engagement. And that required all of the staff. It was assistant principals,
Right.
It was counselors, it was teachers, all in rooms having hard conversations with community members, with parents, about what we could do going forward if we had control over our calendar. And so I think the idea, the only way that you can work this system into the parent specific is by making that effort to go out there and connect with them. And it's similar in that effort that you're making with your staff and the relationship you're building with them, because it's relationships. I couldn't get the whole entire community to move on a huge proposal without thousands of conversations and real dialogue and ultimately real relationships with those parents. And not just with me, but with my staff. And you asked specifically, how did you get your staff to do it? Well, the answer is the goal. The goal. The goal. It's always the goal. And so you circle back around to trying to inspire and motivate your staff. It's about, can you articulate what it is that we're trying to get done with these kids that will really light them on fire?
Yeah.
And that's what we were trying to do all the time. We were full court press on inspiring and motivating staff always.
Yeah, and that's, that again comes back, actually circling back again to Jim Collins and Good to Great. And that's, having the right people on the bus and in the right seats on that bus. And one of the things that he talked about in that book was that your best people may or may not know what the mission statement is, but they live the mission statement in what they do, right? And a lot of that is from that inspiration, keeping that goal out there in front. This is what we do. This is why we do it. This is what we're shooting for. This is what we do. This is why we're doing it. This is what we're shooting for. And really, I think building that teamwork in there so that it's not just Bob's goal, it's not just Kevin's goal, it's our goal. And even if I weren't the one who came up with it and had the input into it, I can buy the goal and to why it needs to be there.
I want to share this story with you because part of that's really built on the ground in a deliberate fashion, because as the leader, I'm not afraid to get dirty. And what I mean by that is this. The very first thing I did as a brand new principal, the very first time I got hired to be the principal, is I went in on maybe a Saturday or a Sunday, and I painted my office myself. And you should have seen the look of shock when the custodian walked in and, what are you doing? I'll do that for you. And no, I got this, man. I got this. And at the end of lunch, when all the kids get up and leave and there's trash all over the place, I'm the principal and I'm diving right in and I'm picking up trash and I'm throwing trash away.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to do the work. And I'm going to be the first one doing the work, leading by example. And I think that's a huge part of it too. You give permission when you're out there in front doing it. And you're sharing what your expectation is too, as the leader. Like, I expect you guys to do this. Come on, let's all go pick up trash. And I'm doing it too. And so I think that's a big part of it as a leader. that you can't be afraid to get dirty.
Yeah.
You got to do the dirty stuff sometimes. You got to check all those tests and make sure the kids bubbled in the sheets correctly. That's
Right.
that's you sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Make sure that it's not just a half-filled circle,
Right.
because it won't read a half a circle.
Right.
We got to fill
And somebody's
that in.
actually got to do that. And because somebody's actually got to do that, it darn well better be the leader doing it. And so that person doesn't have to do it the whole time, or doesn't even have to be the main person.
Right.
But they better not shy away from it, because that's just ugly, boring work that has to get done, and that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I would throw out, and correct me if I'm out in left field somewhere here, but that is all part of the love, right? That the leader is willing to go, hey, this needs done. I'm going to go do this right now, to show everybody else that it's okay to go do this. Because I think a lot of times, as that staff member, you wonder, is it okay if I do that? Or will I get reprimanded for, that's not your job, that's their job, and somebody else needs to be doing that, and you need to focus over here. There's a lot of fear, I think, oftentimes from that staff perspective of, is it okay for me to go love on people?
I love that you just said that, because one of the very first things I share with, especially an incoming principal, is your staff is dying to know what you care about. Don't keep your values a secret. Make sure you're pumping them into the staff, because you're going to be displaying them in your actions all the time anyway. Share that. That's the information they want to know. What does he or she care about? What's the new expectation of me? How am I going to have to move maybe a little bit different for this new leader coming in?
Right.
And they need to know that. And you don't want to keep it a secret, because you want them to actually change the behavior.
Yeah.
And so the faster you can get that out there, the more frequent you can get that out there. I often tell principals, as soon as you see them in the staff meeting making fun of you because you're going to say the thing again, then you did it. That's where you want to get. That's actually a goal, that you want to meet that goal, that they know it's coming and they start repeating it back to you.
Yeah, very much so. So Kevin, how do you get that point across? How did you get that point across to your staff that it's okay to love on the kids? It's okay to love on each other, to build that encouragement going forward.
Yeah, I think what Bob said is spot on. I mean, you have to have that as a part of your conversation piece that they hear consistently. And it sounds like a broken record because you're saying it over and over again, but the people that you're talking to probably only pick it up 20% of the time. And so if you say it 10 times, they've heard it 2. And so you have to reiterate it, come at it from different angles, and then you have to act it out and live it, and apply it to every opportunity for the classroom. You're asking questions. Hey, tell me more about that kid that was in the corner that you didn't talk to. What's his story?
Yeah.
Do you know about what motivates that kid? I mean, just asking them specific questions about the relationships that they maybe have or maybe they don't have, and then holding yourself accountable. Is there the potential of having, or the equivalent of having, that kid in your own staff that it's a teacher in the corner, you really don't get to them that often, or maybe they're not as comfortable to talk to as some of the other teachers, but that person needs to have as much of your contact, and you need to be in a relationship with them as much as the one that you really do get along with. And it's work. It's part of the job that we don't necessarily indicate initially that this is your job. This is one of the things that you have to continuously do and get better at it as you go through the year. But it's as we talk to if you're a leader amongst leaders, if you're the principal, it needs to be on your agenda when you're talking to your team about how much are we in those relationship conversations with our staff, and do we have any outliers? Do we have some of those staff members that we are not connected to, that no one has an indicator of who they are and what's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's I'm sure it's one of those challenges, not just from the administrator side of life, but as you're working on this retreat, this leadership retreat, to figure out, what am I really trying to hammer home, right? What am I really trying to get these guys to do? And then there's always that question, right? Are they just going to do it because we're here? Or are we going to get them to go do it outside of here? What are some of those things that you kind of look at and say, this, if they get nothing out of, the 3 hours, 5 hours, 6 days, whatever it is, if they get nothing out of it but this piece, what's that piece that you're really hoping they will take back to their school, to their classroom, and really implement day one?
Compete. That step one, it's absolutely the moment in the mirror, because the competition isn't whatever school you are running versus some other school. It isn't, your student's football team against some other. I'm not talking about that kind of competition. The competition I'm talking about is you looking in the mirror, intending to have curiosity about the person sitting across from you, whether that's a teacher, a parent, a student. It doesn't make a difference. I want to have curiosity, and I want to know why. I want to know why you think. I don't just want to know what you think. I want to know why you think it, because the why gets me to the root cause, and the root cause is what allows me to actually solve and work on the problem for them. Without hearing the why, I can't do that. And so that's what I'm always looking to do when I get in any of the spaces with whoever it is I'm talking about. So the number one thing I'm trying to get across is that outward mindset. Mm-hmm. I want the whole team, the whole building's attitude to be, it's us. It is that we before me kind of mindset that we are gonna, I'm coming to work, I describe it like this to the staff. When you're coming to work, you know what your schedule is. You know exactly what you're going to teach. You know your lesson plans, you're ready to go. But what you don't know is which one of your colleagues maybe got sick the night before, or maybe their mom's in the hospital and they couldn't be here today. And so somebody needs to cover their class. So what you don't know is whose class you might get to cover today. What you don't know is what after-school activity you might get to cover today. Right. And if we are all walking into the building with that kind of mindset, like, how can I help? How can I help? Ooh, man, that's some power there. We have a highly functioning building now, because if we got everybody kind of coming to work with that outward mindset, how can I help? It makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Kevin, how did you get that into your staff, your faculty? How did you get the how can I help mentality in there? Because I know some of it comes from actually all the way back at the beginning, the actual hiring process, right? Knowing you're bringing the right folks in, but even if you've inherited folks on that team, how do you get that, how do I help folks into the psyche?
I think it goes back to just those leadership qualities about they need to hear it from you and they need to see it from you. And then it needs to be an expectation that is part of the culture. We talk about culture of schools or culture of leadership. That is just really it's the list of things that leader is prioritizing.
Yeah.
And if that sense of I'm in here to help all and to make sure that everyone is being supported, that has to be part of the culture of the way you speak, the way you act, and then the expectations and the questions that you ask of others. And so, even with those that I inherited, and there were times where I inherited team members that I wasn't in the process of hiring, or teachers that I didn't hire. Those are the folks that I would make it a point to intentionally have conversations with them, and not just to have, I'm going to talk about getting them involved, and I need them to be part of the team, and I need them to be, the helping component of that as a team member. I'm just in there just to have a conversation and to build relationships. And then maybe as I'm leaving, I will throw in a little nugget, just talking about, hey, I really would like to see you be part of or engaged in, this one activity that we're having. Just give me 10 minutes of it. I know you're busy. I know you typically are not a part of this, but just give me 10 minutes. I just want you to be a part of that. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about that. So giving them a little bit of encouragement and not necessarily assigning them to be something, but
Right.
telling them that they're needed somewhere and that you as a leader really want them to have their input back to you as a feedback loop. And then they're feeling like it's okay. This is part of my role because I've been here. That person has not necessarily been hired by you, but they see you and they value your opinion.
Yeah.
And then you continue to kind of capture them in moments where, as a seasoned person in that building, they have a part of your leadership sort of feedback loop that engages them. And I can't tell you how many times I've used that, not as a strategy or a tactic,
Right.
but really to get a perspective that I would never have had.
Yeah.
Because there's people that you hire that just want to please you. And they will give you a perspective that is always going to feed your ego. It's nice to get a perspective from someone who has no interest in feeding your ego. Mm-hmm. And they can give you some ideas or maybe a way of thinking about something that you would have never come to on your own because you wouldn't have had not necessarily adversarial point of view, but
Right.
a point of view that is not there to make you happy.
Right.
It's just there to give you information. And I think that's a huge difference and a component that you have to look for as a leader.
So speaking on the, I'll call it the adversarial sort of relationship side, I know that a lot of times over the years, as a faculty member, we always thought the board was against us, that the board was, the board, quote unquote, was there to tell us, you're going to do this and you're going to like it, or you can go somewhere else, kind of a concept. How do we help the boards from that administrative perspective to get to this compete, lead, and love concept?
You run for the board. I mean, you train the board. You offer the board opportunities for leadership retreats themselves. To be fair, over the years, I've seen a lot of really good board members that are really smart people that have waded into this for all the right reasons. And that is typically how it goes. I'd be crazy not to acknowledge the fact that sometimes we get people from far right or far left that have ideological stance on things. And, my perspective as the superintendent, I can share with you that I felt like it was my job to kind of sometimes be an umbrella and make sure and keep all that rain off of the staff and address those issues with individual board members as necessary. But the board has a legit job. They're all about the final piece in my leadership philosophy, in the CLL philosophy. The very last step is accountability, and that's all that boards are. A school board is the living accountability for the entire school district. And in our leadership system, in my leadership system, accountability is it's the very last step on purpose, because I want to work through everything else, all those relationship pieces. I want to work on the strategy. I want to encourage you, and I want to use all the tools I have at my disposal before I have to hold you accountable, right? Ultimately, sometimes you do have to hold people accountable. It is absolutely part of leadership. And if you're truly trying to be a level 5 leader, you're really trying to be a servant leader, if you fail to hold people accountable, man, you're going to get run over.
Yeah.
And so the greatest leaders, and I'm going to just shout them out right now. I worked for Ted Bauman in Lewis Palmer School District. He was the superintendent there. And by reputation alone, we all knew and we felt Ted. And what I mean by we felt Ted, we felt his love. This guy cared about us, and we knew it. As an example, I can tell you that this dude sent every employee in the district a birthday card on their birthday. Think about how many employees are on. And so he really made an effort to show you. But I heard stories. I was never on the receiving end of Ted, but Ted was not shy. Ted was not afraid to hold you accountable if you did something that you needed to be held accountable. And I really tried to model myself after that. I'm hunting encouragement. I'm hunting opportunities to encourage you. I'm hoping that you will strategize, that you will come to me and ask me for that help and strategy. Accountability, it comes to you. Yeah. And when it comes to you, you have to address it. And you have to address it on your timetable when you're ready to address it. Just because it happened doesn't mean you run and address it right now.
Right.
You have to make sure that your mindset is right, that you have all the information before you go running into a situation. And that, more than anything, having my right mindset was probably the most powerful tool that I could use. Even bigger than gathering all the facts was making sure my mindset was right before I picked the phone up or before I had the hard conversation.
Yeah. So Kevin, tell us a little bit about that piece as well, right? That accountability piece, which we all need, we don't always like, but from that leadership perspective, isn't always the easiest thing to provide. What are some tips and tricks, and this is how I went about it in the folks I was leading? How did you do some of that?
Poorly. I mean, I'll be honest, when I first started off, that was something that I did with a mindset of authority and not necessarily a mindset of relationship. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm here, is because I feel like as new administrators, they just need to understand what leadership looks like in terms of being a leader of adults that need encouragement and the courage then to use your relationships to bridge and to be able to structure accountability the correct way. It took me a few years to understand what that role was. To my defense, I was the assistant principal of discipline for 3 years, and so I got really good at confrontation. Yeah. I got really good at addressing behaviors that needed to be changed. And I did it a lot for kids. Yeah. And that was a strong suit of mine, and I felt like I had a skill set that was very much successful. When I translated that to adults, I struggled a little bit because I didn't make the transition in my own head that this has to look and feel different. Yeah. I still had good relationships with people, but I approached it in a way that was not the best way that I would teach people how to do it now. As I got better and as I grew in my leadership capabilities, I first understood how critical it was to have a positive relationship with people. And then when accountability came, and Bob has said this, and I'll reiterate it, that you want people to not want to disappoint you because you have such a great relationship with you. They know that you're about to get into an accountability role, and they're already beating themselves up. And they're embarrassed, and they are remorseful about the whole situation and sad that you're even having to get into that role with them. If I was just going to charge forward, that would be, the relationship wouldn't matter. I wouldn't care about how they thought. It would just be about me telling them what they should know and what they should do. And by God, you better do it or else. Right. There were times, I'll tell you a story, where I had to actually not fire somebody, but take a leadership role away from them because they were being a very poor faculty leader. And they were very aggressive. They were very assertive in the way that they were doing it. And they were doing it the way that I had probably modeled early in my career. And so I took that person to lunch, and we just had a lunch conversation about how our actions deflate people. and what we do to actually cut people down. And I took it from, because he was a great teacher, wonderful teacher. I mean, he was one of my student teachers that got hired.
Oh, wow.
And then when I moved into administration, he took a lot of my classes. He was great with kids. He built relationships with kids. And so I approached it with, what are some of the things that you would never say or never do to a student because it's just going to crush their soul? And and he kind of knew where I was going with it, and he kind of played the game. It's like, yeah. I said, when we talk about leadership as a leader in a building or a leader of adults, it's not much different than what you're talking about with kids. Yeah. If you are just soul crushing, you can get people to change their behavior, but you have just destroyed any sort of relationship that you have ever built or will ever built with that person. And it takes 5 times longer to build it back than it is to get it and keep it. And so after the conversation, I told him that I know I don't want to relinquish you as a leader, but right now we're going to have to go in a different direction with that leadership component, and it kills me to do that. And we gave each other hugs, and there was more said, and there were some other things going on in his life, and some family things and relationship things, and so it was really good for me to sit down with him and really understand where he was coming from. I still had to make the hard conversation and make the hard decision, but in the end, he felt like it was the right decision. He knew it was something that had to be done, and he didn't feel like I was crushing his spirit in terms of how to accomplish that. It takes time.
Yeah.
It's quicker to go in and just ramrod people and just move people the way you need them to move with the big shovel scoop. But the wake of destruction that you leave and the relationship capacity that you destroy is not worth it to do it that way. Take the time. Take the moments that it takes to really build that out and have people understand and use those relationships.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing a lot of from both of you ultimately is it's not about my way of doing things. It's not about we have goal 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to do that head on. It's about taking the heart of who you've got around you, whether that's your staff, your faculty, the students, the parents, the board, and really focusing everything you do on how do we care for their heart as a person, right? Am I off on that, or am I going, okay, that's really what I'm hearing here?
No, it's on purpose. It's deliberate and it's authentic, and so we're trying to drive that authenticity into the whole relationship between the folks. We want them to know it, to feel it, and so it's deliberate. It's deliberate with parents. It's deliberate with staff, and it's deliberate with students. It's deliberate with central office. It's deliberate with the board, because if you're not trying to serve, you don't belong in public education, and so I'm trying to serve. That's why I came here in the first place. It's why I came as a football coach when I came a long time ago. I wanted to teach the kids grit and resilience and to be tough and to stand back up and do all that stuff. And guess what? Now I'm doing the same thing. It's just it's teachers now, and it's principals now. And so you got to be gritty. You got to be tough. You got to be a little resilient sometimes, and kind of show people how to do that.
Yeah, and ultimately, if I'm kind of going back through this, right, where we even started talking about how do you change the system, because comfort, even if we don't quote unquote like the system, it's the system we're comfortable with. We've got to enter a disruptor into that system, and that disruptor, another word for that, right, is chaos. We've got to go into that system, and the only way to even move it back to where we are looking at competing and leading and loving is we've got to introduce that chaos to the system. And not everybody accepts that chaos, do they?
No.
Even if it's the good chaos coming in.
Yeah. What I've learned over the years that people that are most comfortable don't like change, because change takes work. Change is disruptive to how you visualize yourself in a certain role. And when you work with people, chaos is always the norm. We're not working with, machines or trying to create programs. We're working with people. And so there's always invariably multiple varied things that you have to put into place. And the way you worked with one person has to change with the way you work with another person. And if there's a system that is right now dysfunctional and toxic, chaos is the only way to change it. You have to get in there and disrupt all the things that were the norms of the past to reintroduce new norms. And not everyone is going to respond the way you would hope that they would respond. Some people are going to want the old way back and are going to be, resistant because it's different, because it's change. But overall, when you get a building that has that culture and it feeds itself, it begins to showcase from the leader to the teacher, from the teacher to the students, from students to each other, and to the parents. And then it almost just runs itself once it gets to that level of, everybody is engaged with it and everybody is built in and bought into it. So there's just that level of disruption that has to take place if it's not already in place. And I don't know if that's the way that you, in your mind, had scripted what chaos needed to look like, but that's kind of how I interpret it, at least.
I think we're in this moment where we have command and control leadership as a style, and then we have that servant leadership as a style. And given the choice, I'll tell you this, that if I introduce the chaos of compete, lead, love, the CLL framework, and I'm introducing that on purpose into a building, I can take and go one-on-one with that command and control leader, and I'll bump test scores more than that command and control leader will every single time. And over the course of 3 years, I'll put some distance between us. Now, will they have people following orders? Yeah, they will. But they'll also have more of a drain from their staff will leave them, and I'll keep my staff. And over the course of time, when I introduce that sort of chaos on purpose into a building, it's been my experience in a middle school and a high school and then in an entire zone that I was able to pump scores and pop scores each time because I focused on the people that were making it happen with the kids. Yeah. I focused on the teachers so they could focus on the kids, which was really foreign at the time, because when I took over as principal, what you heard was, you better be talking about the kids first, kids first, kids first, kids first. And I did not do that. I did teachers first, staff first, because there's a layer, they're in between me and the kids. Right. And so if I prioritize them, the people who actually work with the kids, I found that I got results that worked. Everybody liked those results. Yeah.
Yeah, I have an example. The shirt that I'm wearing now, Sproul Junior High. I guess I don't want to say that. Maybe I do.
Yeah, you do. Of course you do. I think you should.
They were the highest performing junior high. And I looked at why. It was the culture of that building and the leadership within that building that really made the difference. It was palatable. You walked in the building and you just felt like this was a team. They had a unified staff. They had a close-knit staff, and the staff leadership and the teachers could just resonate their values almost identically.
Who led that building?
That was who is now the superintendent of Whitefield District 3, which was Stephanie Howell. So she was, and she was the assistant principal when that change first started to happen. And I can't remember, just out of pressure, the principal name. That was her principal, because it started before her. Mm-hmm. But she carried it through, and they just were very collaborative. They worked in teams. When they called parents, they were in groups of 3. There was a science teacher, the math teacher, the English teacher, and they were all on a conference call, and they just gloated on the kid. They talked about how they loved the kid. It was just a unified way and a supportive way that they used to translate what their kid meant to them to the parent. And then they collaborated together how they were going to resolve any issues. But the culture of that building, I wish I had more examples of things that they did to showcase how they just really exemplified the CLL framework.
They loved each other.
They loved each other.
Yeah.
They showed it in every way that they possibly could. They loved the kids. They made sure that they honored the kids, and when there were accountability issues, they held kids accountable. I mean, they weren't shy, and they had a rough population that had a lot of concerns that were coming in from the community that were being filtered in, to the school. But they addressed it, and they kept moving in a positive direction. Like you said, their scores went from like the very bottom to the very top. It was like from the bottom to the middle, and then they just never lost the lead.
It's
in
this
5 years.
repeatable sociological experiment that these leaders can go into these buildings and do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the ones that have the courage to do it, because we're not going to, that's not focused on academics. I'm focused on something altogether different so that I can get that academic pop, and I believe it'll work. Yeah. But it takes some courage to choose to do that in the first place. And I think that acknowledging that and surrounding yourself with that team of people that are encouragers and they're speaking that into your head.
Right.
Because when you're a principal, you're on the island, man. There is no one else on the island. It's just you on the island. Yeah. And so that's very real. And so that's why it's so important that as a principal that you do surround yourself on purpose, that you have some kind of group that breathes life into you. And hopefully your admin team is doing that to a certain degree, but even outside of that, I think I would not be a building principal or a superintendent today if I didn't hire somebody like me to support me.
Yeah.
I would not. Like it's too isolating a job. There's too much anxiety and pressure on you, and it manifests inside you physically, and you're foolish if you don't have some kind of outside support helping you out.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that when I was working with that school initially, I was the executive director of secondary learning and math achievement, and so I worked a lot with the math teachers. And math teachers are an interesting group to work with. But
hey, numbers folks are great. Numbers folks are awesome.
I was one of them, so I understood. But what they did as a math team, their scores were the highest in the district. They had the highest math scores of all the junior highs. But what they did was very non-traditional. Mm-hmm. And what they were proposing to do was become even more non-traditional. And part of my administrator hat was very uncomfortable with that. I did not want them to vary away from the plan that we had put forth in the district as here is the sort of the math plan of improvement. But I let them kind of, okay, let's see what happens with that. Go ahead and do these things a little bit different. We still are going to have to hold everybody accountable to the same metric, but let's see if your process can look a little bit different and still, show the gains that we're looking for. And sure enough, it was by department. You would see they had talked about what works for them and for their kids, and they knew what the goal was, but they shot at that goal differently based on the culture of the building, based on their clientele, and what they knew, the relationships that they built with the kids that showed them that even though this might work, your plan, Kevin, might work in terms of, a formalized plan, we have to tailor that for our kids, for our community, because we know our kids. We've learned how our kids function, and we are the experts in how to reach our group of students. So sometimes as leaders, we have to back off and say, all right, you know what the goal is. So, go ahead and make some variances to that and give them the freedom to be able to work in a way that is going to allow them to have the advocacy for their kids and for their community to see if it'll work. And if it's the right framework, I believe in this because I've seen it. It will work. It's sometimes counterintuitive to what you think as a leader that it should work, but I don't know why it works so well, but it just works.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect to say in this moment, give Peter Hiltz a little bit of credit because the innovation idea is truly what you just described. You just described the birth of why innovation was pushed into District 49 schools because of that. Because we wanted to give teachers permission to fail. That permission to try something outside of the box, outside of the norm that they really thought, they really believed because they're academic educational experts themselves, that they could get that done. And what we found was this: when they owned it,
Yep.
oh man, there was a different kind of pursuit when we owned it.
Yeah.
And that became the magic.
Yeah.
And that you just described it, and innovation is uncomfortable. It felt uncomfortable at first for us too, like, but we described it, and it truly was teacher autonomy via innovation. So yes, you can have all the autonomy you want if you're trying something new and creative that you really think is going to accomplish the goals that we've set out for you. And you just described it perfect, and I couldn't let the moment pass without saying that had to happen in Peter's world at some point when he dreamt this all up, and he injected it into a whole district as a consultant at the time. And I just want to give him credit for it because I think it was a brilliant plan. Because the more we can get teachers owning their stuff, man, we just unleash them. You know, and that's.
And when you own something, you feel it's not work.
Right.
It doesn't feel taxing.
Exactly.
Because you're working towards something that you have bought into.
Right.
I rent a car. And if I rent a car, we rented a car in Texas when we went there, and we were driving close on this little road that had trees and branches, and it was just like scratching through the trees and the branches. And I don't care. It's a rental. As long as I don't get paid for, I don't have to pay for the damage. I don't, if that was my car, I would have never went down that road.
Right.
And I would have worked harder to keep it pristine. I have ownership. So ownership is something that's psychological. That if people feel like your plan is your plan and not their plan or not our plan, it's just going to be used as a rental. And they're going to do the minimum just to get it back in some sort of shape that you would like to see it. But if it's their plan, they will work hours that they would have never dreamed of working to make sure it's successful.
That's right.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, and I think what you guys are really hitting on here, and I know we've had the discussion before, I'm assuming the two of you probably have as well, that the concept of pedagogy will only take you so far if all you're doing are, the machinations of everything, and we do this first and this second and this third and this fourth, and I stand up in front and talk about it this day and demonstrate it on the board, that will take you so far. But it's knowing who the students are, knowing that population, getting the buy-in, and really working on that heart to be able to say, hey, we believe in you. We hired you because we know you're good at this. Go do what you're good at. And if I need to, step in and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, have you thought about this? Rather than, hey, nope, not that way. We got to do this. It really is tapping into the hearts of every last person in that district, whether faculty, staff, students, parents, whatever the case may be.
That's why I think going back to why this training is so important for leaders is that human nature tells us that we have a script, you follow that script, and you have outcomes that are supposed to work.
Yeah.
And now we just ramrod our ideas without building that, that ownership capacity.
Yeah.
I wish I would have had that initially when I first got in, because that would have made a huge change from how I went into my assistant principaling, into my becoming a principal, and the first couple of years where, I didn't get it until I got it.
Right.
But I'm so glad I got it as I went through the ranks and then became superintendent, because the way I led as a superintendent was way different than the way I first started to lead as a principal. And it was because of the critical components of those leadership skill sets that are that they have to be taught. They have to be instructed, and people need to see what the measures of success and what the characteristics of priority of a leader looks like versus when you're in a classroom or what you think it might look like, just in terms of what you think you should be doing or should be saying or should be conducting yourself as a leader when you first get into that role. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything to add to that?
No, I think you guys just summed it up beautifully. It's to sum up the whole episode, I guess, here today. You have to do this on purpose. You have to intentionally wade into people with the intent to listen to them and have that outward mindset. It really does start with there. Everything starts with that. And if you can have that, you give yourself a real good chance, because people kind of get to know you, and they actually care about you a little bit too. And that works out in your benefit. I think that we give permission to leaders to explore that, because what they're hit with on the inside is a lot of instructional technique. It's the new neat plan or the new curriculum, and the truth is it's always really been about being the best teammate you can be and helping them to be the best teammate they can be, and encouraging them to do it. It's really quite simple, but I know we make it awful complicated.
Yes. Yes, we absolutely do. Well, guys, I think that seems like a good spot to end the chaos for today. We'll be back again with future episodes.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
So everybody, you want to tune back in the next episode we get.